All righty. Good morning, everybody. I say everybody, I mean nobody, because we just started. Checking all
Sounds about
of.
like
Say what?
sounds about like my Twitch intros. And
Yeah.
we're live. Hi, everybody who's not here yet because it's been 10 seconds.
Yeah. Everybody, maybe my mom is watching yet. I don't know. Say hey, we'd love to hear from you. Just checking all the platforms. Let's see here. Hello. Would love to hear from you. Say hey, because I need to know if I'm live or not. Still waiting on the notification for YouTube. That's not there yet. We're getting viewers. Where are we getting viewers from? X right now. What's going on Twitter? It's good to see y'all this morning. TikTok. We're just waiting out here. So if you're watching, all right. Yes, finally live on YouTube. So we got that down. So that's good. And then LinkedIn. Y'all say hey, we'd love to hear from you. Always love to see where people are tuning in from. All right, cool. We are live on all the platforms. Sweet. Sally, what's going on? John, good morning. Good morning. Richie, my guy from ATL, what's going on? Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Hopefully I had a great weekend. Hey, fun fact, I made pancakes for the first time ever this weekend. Ever, Chris. I've never made pancakes.
I've never either, but that's because I don't like pancakes.
Okay.
So we make waffles all the time.
Okay. All right. So I'm not the only person. I'm not the only person that's not made pancakes. But yeah, literally, I was asking my wife, because my daughter's like really big in pancakes right now. And I was like, how do you make pancakes? And she looked at me and she was like, what? And I was like, I've never made pancakes. And she goes, what are you talking about? So I've made 2 things of pancakes. I made 2 batches of pancakes. The second ones were a lot better than the first one. Second ones were peach pancakes. However, the peaches were not quite ready for pancakes. They're a little ripe. They're a little too ripe. They're a little hard. They're still good though, but not great. I still say banana pancakes are probably the goat of pancakes, at least that I've had. But anyways, this isn't a pancake show. This is a career show. So good morning. Say hey, we'd love to hear from you. I have my wonderful friend Chris on tuning in from Huntsville, Alabama. Do you live in Huntsville or are you like outside of Huntsville?
I'm actively in Huntsville.
You're actively in like Huntsville proper. Sweet. Awesome.
Huntsville is strangely huge compared to what you think of with most metros. It's built in a valley on a bunch of limestone caves, so it couldn't go up, so it went out. So Huntsville City itself is in 3 counties.
There you go. I did not know that. And
not by much in the other 2, but I mean, it's the city itself is large comparatively speaking. You talk to like Birmingham, it's tiny, which is a huge metro. We're actually a huge city with just some suburbs spread out.
I really wish I remember the coffee shop I went to when I spoke down at DevSpace 2 years ago. It was so good. A little hip little spot. It was fantastic. Breakfast was great. I need to find it. It was fantastic.
If you could point me in the right direction, I could probably tell you what it was called. But
it was great. Yeah, I forgot.
Was it the one in the parking garage, if I recall correctly?
I think so.
That's Honest Roaster. It's our Honest Brother. It's Honest something coffee.
So good.
Yeah, right up there in Clinton.
All right, so we got a lot of people tuning in. So let's get started again. This is a networking thing, right? The reason, I tell people this, and I don't mean this mean to the speakers. The speakers are secondary for this live show. The only reason why I do this is I want this to be a networking platform for everybody. So everybody who's tuning in, there's a lot of people who've tuned in. Please go connect with others. Just send them a DM like, hey, it was great to see you on the show. What I've realized is networking, you just need something to like not be weird in the DMs, right? And so my excuse is this show. So just message people. Again, I've had 2 people find jobs directly because of this show, not through me, if that makes sense. So like they've like networked with somebody over the course of months and then found a job because of it. So again, we love to see that. What else? Got a few announcements here. First off, shout out to Gun.io for hiring me. And listen, if you need talent, use us. We're pretty decent at it. I want to give a shout out to Endorsed AI. Listen, this is for me. This is I'm helping. I'm advising on this company. So typically, when you submit your resume to a job posting, it is solely time stamped, right? So let's say Chris posts a job for one of his projects at Accenture, and you submit your resume. You can be the first person to submit your resume, but if Chris's recruiter sorts it through the last person who submitted, not the first person, your resume would never be seen. So what Endorsed AI does is based off parameters you plug in, it actually uses AI and pushes the resumes that are actually a fit to the very top instead of a timestamp. So if you're a hiring manager or TA, I'd highly recommend checking that out. What else? Also, I'm doing a dad's group. So like if you're in a tech and you're a dad, Even if you're not, even if you're aspire to be in tech or aspire to be a dad, would love to have you. First meetup is September 6th. It's going to be lunchtime. I don't know what I'm doing. We're going to build this as we fly, whatever it is, build the plane while we fly it. But I just realized I've talked to a lot of dads. I mean, Chris and I were chit-chatting before we went live about dropping off our kids, right? So again, I think there's a lot of topics we can bond over, and we do need a group. So please go join that newsletter. I will send all updates. It's not a newsletter. Like, I'm not going to spam you. I'm just going to send updates with the newsletter. So go check that out. Shout out the Friend Zone. Kelly Vaughn and I are starting a community Discord to solely help people on the job search. There is a free membership, but there's also some tiered members if you want more access to Kelly and I on a one-on-one basis. So go sign up at thefriendzone.lol. It's going to be good. Also, if you're tuning in and you want some updates when I go live, I texted about 70 people that Chris and I are going live. Text me live to 615-235-5650. And I text you every single day I go live with my guests to see if you want to pop in or not. There's a lot of people who tune in this morning, Chris. People want to see you. John, Katie, Jesse, former guest of the show. Jesse, hope you're doing well. JC, Taya, Katie, Chris, Justin, John, Colin, Eric. Waffles are greater than pancakes. I do have, I don't know. Jordan, it's good to see you. Refui, I don't probably mispronounce that, but it's great to see you this morning. No joke, it's huge. I had to go there 2 hours to get to City 4 minutes where I was going from Huntsville. I love it. I love it. Cool. All right, Chris, enough of me yapping. Let's get the people what they want. Who are you? What do you do? And we'll go from there.
Simple enough. My name is Chris Gardner. I am currently the full title, I believe, is Software Product and Platform Engineering Manager at Accenture. We consultants work on projects. Just it's a nice large company, so the scale of the companies I work with are probably larger than most people are used to.
Sure.
We're just like I'm just starting a contract right now, and of course I can't say who it is, but let's say we are working on something for a large international company, that is hiring us as consultants. So, we'll just leave it at that. So that's the type of scale I'm at. I've been doing this whole tech thing all the way from individual contributor to where I am now for almost 30 years. And yeah, I got a lot of war stories.
I love it. We're gonna talk about some of them for sure. Waffles are absolutely here. Listen. I get it. I'm just saying. I think if you have a good pancakes are just as good as waffles, right? All right. So Chris, well, for those of you tuned in, I'm trying to change the format a little bit, right? And we can talk about job search stuff. That's fine. And Chris, I'm gonna talk about that. But what I want to talk, especially senior engineering leaders, I want to talk about how they got to where they're at in their career. We're gonna try to change the format a little bit. I'm not going to go completely in that, like that's all we're going to talk about, but I do want to change it. So Chris, listen, I think a lot of people view seniors and managers like yourself, and they're like, oh, you have it easy, but you started out as a junior, right? You started out as somebody not knowing anybody. So I want to talk about briefly, how did you get into tech, man? And obviously it's been some years. It's been some years since you got to tech.
I've got some more.
Yeah. So I'm curious, man, right? I mean, because like I talked to the vets who like, in the recruiting space, who like used to recruit without the internet, which that sounds wild to me. Right. So like, how did you first get into tech, man?
So first of all, we got to go all the way back that I'm very fortunate in my age that at an extremely young age, about 8 years old, I had a father who was in the military, who was doing some tech stuff with the military, which it allowed him to get a hold of a ancient PC back in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And ancient PCs that loaded by floppy disk were indestructible. So I kind of had free range to do what I wanted with it. So I was kind of able to, like we tell people, yes, don't live your life programming, but the earlier you can get started, the earlier you can get courage and you can spark that and you can kind of get that, let's just say first 250 out of your 1,000 hours, 10,000 hours out of the way, the better. That I kind of was given that.
Yeah.
Fast forward through playing around with that all through the years, then to get to the meat and potatoes. After high school, I went to the Air Force Academy for a couple of years, left. When I left, I was fortunate enough that my dad at that point had a friend that was starting a software startup. And so I kind of got thrown in as an intern. So yes, my first job was a little bit of nepotism, but it was an introduction from somebody in the field. There you go. It just happened to be there. It was from my dad. Worked there for a couple years, got some experience under my belt. was fortunate enough to transition that into a couple of contracts. Yes, some of those also were with the help of friends, but that's where you get to where
Well,
you're going.
yeah, so I want to interrupt you, but I see questions coming in. So if you have questions for Chris, I'm going to get to them. John, I see yours, so I'll get to them here in a few minutes. But Chris, I know you like that right there, friends and family. Talk about the importance of that. I feel like we're all, and I preach it, right? I preach all the time. Go out, net new, contacts, net new people, new contacts, yada yada yada. But talk to me. I mean, it sounds like you just leverage your friends and family.
Yeah, basically. I mean, if we go back into that time period, so yeah, I had, and to go a little more granular into that period, I left the Air Force Academy. The original intention was just to get a silly job. I was 19 at the time.
Silly job. I
Get
love
a
it.
silly job, build up some money, move back to where I mostly grew up, North Carolina.
What part?
And
What part of North Carolina?
Fayetteville, because
Oh,
dad
nice.
military. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So, move, but I wasn't necessarily going to go back to Fayetteville. It was, either look at the options. Well, I was originally accepted to UNC Asheville. I had friends that were at
Nice.
NC State. Go to a different college, finish out my degree there. During that period of time, had a couple silly jobs, and then that's, like I said, my dad had a friend he worked with at another company from where he moved down there that was starting his own little startup. Kind of like, hey, my son's does a lot of programming, low overhead type of thing, because I was kind of still mostly living at home at the time and whatnot. Take him on, show him the ropes, let's see what's going
Sure.
on. And just, it was a matter of when I got there, just taking it seriously and absolutely trying to kill it the best I can. And it was even really kind of difficult because growing up in the 80s and 90s, all the programming I was doing was, of course, for somebody in high school, basic and Pascal and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Nowadays it would be more like, Python, which Python is a valid language, but it's the same idea that, it's not a big boy language. It's a
Sure.
very flexible, very learning language that just happens to run half the world right now. Okay, a third of the
True.
world. Third of the world's on Python, a third of the world's on JavaScript, the rest of it's on performant languages. Um, I shouldn't say that. That's mean. They're performant because they get the job done. But
Sure.
that kind of low level, more
Sure.
intense languages.
So,
Good.
so I was going to ask, just because I want to dig into this, like what, like if you were to tell people that are on the job search right now, and again, I told y'all who are listening, I'm going to work some tips into this thing. What would you tell them when it comes to leveraging their network?
The network comes from the strangest places, and I've got a reverse story on that, which I'll get to in a
Please.
minute. But blind applying is really strange and hard, and I've had it work a couple times.
Oh, really?
That's literally, one of them was sure luck. The rest of them were, yes, blind applying worked, but I sent out 100 blind applies to get one I got lucky on. And I don't necessarily, when you're on the job search, there's nothing wrong to going to, I think at the time, most of those, except for the one where I got really lucky early in my career, were I just went to Stack Overflow jobs and just anything that fit the right criteria I sent to, and I
Yeah.
sent to hundreds of them, and very few of them hit back. And I had some good interviews, and especially a blind interview is a really good practice because you've got no information coming into it. It's just what you can research on your own.
Sure.
But when you get to the point where you're like, hey, I heard you're looking, who can you hook me up with and whatnot, and you can get directly to the right place. I've gotten much farther in all those interviews and landed much more of those jobs than those blind ones. Just sometimes it's been a while when you're on a search and you just have to go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So got your first job, obviously out of school. Talk to me, man. If there has been maybe a misstep that you made early in your career that you wish you could have back, or maybe not even a mistake, but like if you could just like if you're thinking about it, like, man, like if I just did that. Now, granted, you're in a great spot now. You're at Accenture. You're an engineering leader. I mean, people think you probably have it made, but if was there something early in your career like, man, I just wish I would have done that a little bit differently?
There were a couple points where I was just young and stupid, where
Yeah.
just not showing up the next day to the work There was a great story, not great, but it worked out. And it was probably out of a couple of my defining moments in my career, one of the most defining moments of my career, because it would have just been over at that point. Young, just turned 21, still working at that job. Everything's
Yeah.
going great. Got a little too drunk the night before, woke up, got to work stupid late, still obviously hungover.
Yeah.
Boss was like, "Nope, that's it. You know, you're
Yeah.
done." The quote unquote advantage was the commute to this. It was technically in the next county, in the next city over. Um, was like long enough that I asked the boss, "Hey, look, okay, I get it. I did something stupid. I'm
Sure.
gone.
Sure.
But I already drove all the way out here. I'm here. Let me finish out the day. Honestly, I'm done." And he said, "Okay," and just didn't let it get me down. Just honestly, just concentrated and did what I needed to do that day, and absolutely
Yeah.
did everything I wanted to. And at the end of the day, he was like, "Okay, look, we can't have this happen again, but
Sure.
you know, we're not going to fire you. We're going to consider this your final warning. Come back." And it was kind of a scared straight moment,
Yeah.
but he honestly told me that you going, "I'm already here. Let me finish up the day," is probably the smartest thing you ever did, because it gave me
Interesting.
time to see the value you're doing. We just got to fix you. And it was one of those things that helped fix me from, hey, at this point in time, I'm still technically, I'm still college age. I'm
Right.
actively taking a couple college classes at the time. Time to be the big boy and actually take the career seriously. And, sometimes it's the inverse of, how do you get hired? Well, sometimes when you have the job, what's the smart things you do to stay on? And that's when you mess up, own up to it, and then still do your best.
Well, and I was going to ask you, right? Because I mean, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a lot of people right now that may have a job, but they're probably scared to get laid off. And I tweeted something out about knowing your worth. That's something I'm really big on right now. What is your recommendation coming from a guy who just told his story, right, about making a huge fuck up, staying, showing the worth? You're now an engineering leader. How can somebody show their worth right now? What's the best way that somebody, let's just say someone on your team, how can they show their worth to you right now?
To me, when it comes to tech, and I've talked about this a lot, the actual hands-on keyboard is the easiest part. Yes, we're dealing with
Interesting.
hard
Okay.
problems. Yes, there's the code, but that's just focus, mindset, flow, Stack Overflow. As much as I hate it, Copilot, which can get you 90% of the way there, et cetera, et cetera. That's the
Yeah.
easiest part. The human aspect is the hardest part to manage. And to me, when I've been working in contracts, the people who treat their coworkers well, who ask questions when they need to, who
Yep.
get involved with the team,
Yep.
who aren't afraid to do that stuff, those are the things where we had a contract at Accenture not too long ago where we were trying to backfill a couple of positions. And there was someone who I knew from the past who I hadn't directly worked with, but I think I'd worked with their people lead. Uh, and knew and was like, look, she's not she's not the gonna hit the ground running. She doesn't know everything. She's pretty green, but she puts in the work, she asks good questions, and at the end of the day, she gets it done. And based on that, we got her hired onto the project, and she killed it. And it's all because of that reputation of, you're a good person, you ask the questions, you work with the team, you do the parts you need to. And I think people underestimate how much that goes. You don't necessarily even have to be the most likable guy. There are people I've worked with in the past where I absolutely hate them, but they get the job done and they treat you fairly. Fairly may be meanly, but
Huh.
it's fairly.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. That's interesting. So obviously kind of progressing through your career. And I think this could be a great question that John asked a few minutes ago. How do you jump, or how did you jump from senior / lead to manager, right? When did that career shift happen? What were some thoughts, right? Because I mean, I've interviewed a ton of engineering leaders on this. Like, what was kind of the moment? When did you start to feel called towards a little bit more of a leadership side of things?
It happened gradually when I was at T&W Operations, which
Yeah.
you met me during that period of time.
Okay.
For and about 10 years, and I ended up over the course of time being the CTO of that organization.
Okay.
So the story behind that is, if we go back to that first job I had, eventually just company went out of business. I scraped together through a recommendation of the owners. I got a contract gig with his sister making a silly little program. Use that to get a couple of other programs. Use that to get another job, which I think there was some nepotism involved with that. It was like my dad was like, "Hey, we can't hire this guy because of the nepotism rules at the company,
Right.
but we're way behind on this, and I know he's available. We can get him in on a contract just to help get the project removing back to where it needed to be." And for a long time early in my career, a lot of it was through recommendations. It's like, this guy will get you back on track.
Yeah.
He will pull amazing things out, and we'll get to some of those stories here in a minute. But I kind of fumbled my way through until while I was at that one and I was realizing things were coming to the end. Again, this is the 90s. Keep this. It may have been early 2000s, but you get the time frame.
Sure.
Looking through the newspaper in the job section, there was an ad that jumped out at me that said "Hotshot C++ programmer wanted, send resume to this email address." That's all it said. Why not? So I sent it off. Ended up getting that job. And was with that company for 5-6 years.
Yeah.
We're gonna kind of, there's some interesting things that happen there, but we're gonna kind of sweep that one under the rug. But from there, through that period of time, my dad had formed not even a company to do tech work. He formed a company so that he and my uncle could flip houses and protect it under an LLC.
Okay.
And then let's talk about knowing your friends. One of his golfing buddies, who happened to be a colonel on Redstone Arsenal, was like, "Hey, we kind of have this thing we're playing around with when we want to think about. You think you can help us out with it?" And he had this holding company laying around, and he spun it up into this company, and he grabbed me to be the
And your
software guy to
dad
help
just
him.
hooking you up, man.
But through all that, we got this contract. That company grew to, by the time and when I got grabbed, because we got to get back to the question about
Leadership.
but he
Yeah.
grabbed me. I was the software guy. Dad was the hardware guy. Uncle who was a logistics guy from the military, was the logistics. We all kind of figured it out as we went along. Spun that company up into what was a multi-million-dollar company for a while. Close to 100 employees worldwide. But that was a slow journey of, okay, I was the software guy. Okay, we have more stuff. Grabbed a friend of mine who was between jobs, who I knew was a good programmer. Got him involved, but that's kind of what turned me into the senior programmer, because I grabbed him.
Yeah.
Over time, as the company grew, the responsibilities grew, and that's how I went from, hey, I was just one of the 3 founders, to now I'm the CTO, and we've got all these employees, and we're working on multiple projects and things like that. And a lot of it is just that somebody's got to be the guy to do it, and you got to be the guy that steps up to do it. A joke, because we haven't got this far in the career, but a joke in Accenture is you don't get promoted by just waiting around to get promoted. You get promoted by proving you're doing the job anyways, and so they eventually give you the title.
Real quick, pause. I want to talk about this real fast, and then we'll talk about the jump to leadership. I feel like for the longest time, we have been told to sit there, shut up, do your job to get promoted. Now, what I've realized over the course of a few years, that you got to be proactive and essentially do the job that you want to do before you even get the look on to do the job and get promoted. Thoughts on that?
That's 100% correct, especially more recently. It used to be, as the joke went, you could just stick around long enough and they'd give you more money and more title until you found the place where you were incompetent, and then you would stick there.
Yeah.
It's there's a joking name for it, but it's in any corporate structure, a person will rise to their level of incompetence. But that was the old way. These days, it's like they look for the people who are starting to display those leadership things, and move on. At a job I had before I got to where I am in Accenture, where Accenture is very explicit about, you get to the next level when you're already doing that.
Yeah.
But the idea was when I was pulled on, and I was pulled on again because it's like, this guy has the skill you need, grab him on contract. Me and the team got along well enough. I converted it into full time, and I stayed there for almost 5 years. Until they actually offered me the job, but we'll get to that more explicitly in a second. But the idea is that originally they were like, you just sit here, you program, you work on this thing. Right. And then it was like, if we cut out the middleman, so instead of having my tech director talk to the client, if I could talk to the client directly, a lot of this would move on faster. And then I handled that relationship so well I mean, when I told them I was leaving, she literally cried. But I mean, managed that relationship so well that they started letting me move in on other things. And then by the time I left, they actually offered me the job of the tech director from where I was. I just kind of knew from where I was at that point in time. And I loved the company. I won't say anything bad about the company, but I knew I would never advance and skill up like I wanted to there just because of the nature of that business.
Sure.
Which is why I then, when I ran into the opportunity, took the opportunity where I could get into Accenture, where I could really advance and level up and be challenged.
Yeah.
But but yes, the same thing. It's you start showing those things, you start learning that communication, you start showing those leadership skills, you start doing it, and that's what gets the people to notice to move you forward.
Let me ask you this, and maybe you don't want to answer truthfully. Do you actually enjoy management?
Yes and no.
Sure. Yeah, I love it. Well, let me ask you this. Talk about what somebody needs to be mindful of before they jump into management then.
So the biggest thing you need to be mindful of is that if you love tech and you love programming, that goes out the window.
Love that.
It's not saying I don't do.
I feel like that's very straightforward.
I don't say I don't do any programming anymore. I mean, and there's of course the peripheral stuff. Like I'm one of the approvers for pull requests, so I still have to get in the code and get dirty. And occasionally there's like, look, this is just a grunt work task that nobody cares about. I'm going to go in there and knock it out so that all of you can have fun because I did my time. But your day to day is more putting out fires and wrangling things and letting your team stay focused so they can work on the hard problems more so than it is getting in there and having fun with the hard problems. And I do highly miss that. How do I get around that? I have this lovely pet project, open source project I work on on the sides in the weekend so I can stay active. But one of the reasons I wanted to get into it, one of the reasons why I started the Twitch streams with the live coding, which I've got to find a way I can get back to, but Accenture's schedule is crazy. And doing all that is because I've hit the point in time where I've been doing this now for so long that even the hard challenges, as much as they're hard, aren't necessarily challenging for me. And I've done my time and I've had my fun. Well, if I want to be, we're going to use the horrible saying, but we're going to use it in the correct way. If I want to be a 10x engineer, the way I'm going to be a 10x engineer is by doubling 10 people under me. And I would rather move on and teach and give all these lessons to people and show them, hey, here's the thought process we went to. Here's how the tech actually works behind the scene. Here's what's going on. Let's level you up and create this beautifully high-performing team that can do incredible things. And I don't even want to take credit for it. I want to sit back and go, did you see what this guy did? That was awesome. I've had those moments in my career. It's awesome. It's just as awesome going, this guy who was a little timid when we started just pulled that off.
Yeah. I love that. I love that, man. That's awesome. All right. So as we wrap up here, time flies when you're having fun with friends.
I know.
I know. Let me ask you this. Is there anything that you would want to impart on the people watching? Again, the ticker's been, a lot of people watched today. Is there any last words of wisdom from Chris Gardner that you would want to impart either on job seekers or hiring managers or leaders or anything that's on your mind right now?
So if you were talking about from the hiring perspective, that side, and I've been on the hiring side, of course, being a CTO and whatnot. The big thing I tell people is stop looking at the resume. The resume
you're talking add hiring managers right now.
Yeah. The resume needs to be good enough to say, okay, it looks like they have the technical skill.
Amen.
If you're hiring a junior or an entry level,
I wouldn't even
doesn't matter anyways.
I wouldn't even look at it
because you're trying. Well, it's nice to go. Okay, look, they at least have enough of a background. But you're saying I want to take somebody that doesn't know what they're doing and I'm going to guide them to where they want to do. And I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to grab people during my career and be able to do that for them. Back to things we were saying earlier, a friend of mine in the pool league I was in saying, knew I was, this kind of hiring manager position, was like, hey, I've got this hotshot guy just out of high school, doesn't know what he wants, but he's pretty good with computers. Can you grab him on? Sure, I talked to him. Granted, it only lasts like 8 months and we ended up having to lay him off just because of business stuff. But just being able to grab somebody and guide them and point them in the right direction. And then, I now still follow them on Twitter and they're progressing and they're moving forward because somebody took a chance on them because they were a good guy. And I think
Yeah.
hiring managers need to realize the thing you're looking for is not the person that can check all the boxes. You need somebody that is open and collaborative and excited and
Yep.
hungry
Yep.
and wants to do the work, but on top of that, just knows how to think.
Yeah.
I was notorious at T&W operations when I was the hiring manager. I would tell people, I don't expect you to answer any of these technical questions I'm giving you. Period, end of subject. I picked some of the most obscure things we ran into while we were working on this project that took us days of research to figure out, and I don't expect you to know it off the top of your head. What I want to do is I want to present you the problem, and I
Yeah.
want you to talk it out. And as you're talking it out, I'm going to be your Google search and tell you what took me 3 hours to figure out, and I want to see how you attack the problem.
I love that.
And the people that would just sit there and just start talking it out and say, okay, yeah, that part, this feeds into this, and could work it out, were the absolute best hires we ever had. The people that would just freeze up and be like, I don't know, just and like would those aren't the good candidates.
Yeah.
Or even if they were, like, I don't even know how to start to attack this problem. I might talk to some people, but I don't even know what to look for to start with, and we're open about it. Okay, they're admitting they don't know they're at fault. At Accenture, the last project I just rolled off of, we had one guy we staffed that was he was interviewing for lead programmer. We ended up hiring him for tech lead because he was hungry for it.
Yeah.
And he did a great job. And
Love it.
it's seeing that part there and looking beyond the resume, where the resume say this just needs to be that guy, where this guy was saying, yeah, I'm really interested in this, and I did this with the people I'm working with. We're like, we're going to try you over here. Was he the perfect tech lead? No. I mean, we could have found somebody that would. We had to help him a little bit. We had a hands on him a little bit, but we knew that when we took him.
Yeah.
But he did great with this team, and he had probably one of the largest. He was the front end tech lead, so he had the most forward facing position out of all of us. I was the DevOps tech lead. I was like, nobody saw the stuff I was working on.
Right. Right.
But because of that, and because I had a lot of experience, I was able to go, hey, let's look at how we're doing this. Maybe look at this way. Maybe step back from here. Maybe you need to move forward on here, and kind of get him where we needed him to be. And he just absolutely killed it. Now he's moving on to other positions like that because of it. So that's where I would go on that side. From the job seeker side, one, there's nothing wrong with blind applying. Don't get your hopes up on it. If you see a cool job, apply. If you don't know anybody there, you may get lucky. I've gotten a few jobs off of blind applying. I've gotten lucky a few times. But yeah, the best things come to stick in your Slack communities, talk to your Twitter people, talk to your friends at
Yeah.
conferences if you can get
Yeah.
to them, things like that.
Yeah.
Because anytime you can have somebody, going back to the hiring manager side of, don't look at the paper, look at the person. When somebody says, look at this person, I look at that person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where that knowing your community and knowing people and using that to get your foot in the door. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how half this industry comes, especially when you start getting at that senior level and that tech lead level. As I was getting more into those positions, as I was moving up, it was all about recommendations.
I love that. I love that. All right, last question, man. Show's called Guidance Counselor 2.0 because we had guidance counselors at middle school, high school, and college, but now as adults, we don't necessarily have them. If you can go back in time and talk to young Chris, what would be your biggest piece of career advice to young Chris?
Keep moving. Same thing I always did, but it's just keep moving. Don't let the setbacks bring you down. Don't let it's okay to occasionally have to take a step back and do something else, especially if it like fulfills a minor. There was a point in time when I was working careers and I was in tech and my career was pretty established and I got laid off and I said, I need a small break. And I went and I worked at a nightclub for a year and worked as a bartender and as a DJ and in security, eventually even, assistant managing the club for a while. And during that time, of course, I was always doing some tech stuff on the side, and I was playing around with ideas and doing things that could have become projects later, none of those actually turned out, but playing around with things and staying active. But I needed a break. It was fine. Got to scratch another itch of mine, doing stuff in the music industry and whatnot. And then when I came back, I was ready to kill it, and I did.
I love it.
Don't be afraid to chase those intellectual interests, and don't be afraid to do those little side projects and to take a little time off. And when the career knocks you down, it's fine. You can get back.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
I love
If
it.
you're doing it for the right reason, which is the love and not the paycheck, and there's nothing wrong with doing it for the paycheck, but if you're doing it for the right reason, just keep going.
I love it. That's awesome. I love that, man. Well, y'all, thank you again for tuning in this morning. Appreciate the comment section's been out of control. So thank you so much. It was a great episode. I think people did enjoy this type of format. Oh, Chris, last question. I forgot to ask you at the beginning. It's like an intro because we got caught up on pancakes over waffles. The question I'm starting to ask at the beginning of every episode is what did you want to do when you were in grade school? And do you think you would be good at that now, knowing you?
Grade school would have been one of three things.
Okay.
One of which was software. Like I said, I started programming at 8. I've always
just
loved
big
programming,
nerd from the get-go.
That's always been there. I wanted to be an astronaut, but I knew, so it was for a while I wanted to do astrophysics. I do have a degree in math. I do love math. Physics is just applied math. I think I actually would have done well in that if I would have went to it. And the other thing is I always wanted to be a musician. Talked about doing the DJ stuff for a while. I've got a ton of guitars and stuff behind me that I still tinker around in the background. If I had the work ethic I have now and I developed through tech, at 21, could I have maybe made it a musician? Maybe. Is there always going to be that, hey, could I? And, who knows? I might one day just release some stuff on Spotify and record it myself because I have all the equipment now.
I love it.
But, do I see the people who are now famous musicians and go, they were blessed with that work ethic at a young age that I didn't grow into until maybe my mid-20s? Yes.
Yeah.
So that's where it all comes back to where I was talking earlier with that work ethic. So am I doing what I wanted to do when I grew up? In a way, yeah. I mean, there are some other interests that would have been fun to tickle that may or may not ever happen, but I'm happy with how with young me would be pleased.
I love it. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, y'all, thank you again for hanging out. Chris, stay on so I can say bye to you backstage. But y'all have a good one. Tomorrow, I have Liz on the show. Liz is a recruiter. I don't know Liz at all. Liz had a really good post on LinkedIn that I saw through the algorithm around follow-up in the job search. I know a lot of us struggle with follow-up, how to reach out, how many times reach out, what does the cadence look like, what should I write? So tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Central, we're going to talk about how to follow up in the job search from another recruiter. Then Wednesday, I have my dear friend Ryan Burgess from Netflix, previously Netflix, on the show on Wednesday. So it's going to be a great next 2 days. Hope you all have a good one. Chris, thank you, my friend. And we'll see you all tomorrow.
As always, anytime.
Peace.